Let's now talk to Benjamin Ryberg over at the Lawfare Project, where he is the Director of Research. You may remember the Lawfare Project, which you can find online. I think it's the lawfareproject.org. We spoke to Brooke Goldstein a few weeks ago, and she gave us an introduction to the things she's doing to help fight terror from a legal perspective. And they're specific about what they do, and we've talked about Manchester a lot with the first two guests today. So let's say hi to Benjamin Ryberg.
Hi, Adam. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, we're not going to talk about Manchester. It's not your area of expertise, as you told me before. But what is going on with the Lawfare Project these days?
So quite a bit, as you said, using legal systems and the legal apparatus to confront terrorism. A few of the most exciting accomplishments we've had recently, as you and your audience may or may not recall, just a few weeks ago, we had Hamas, a U.S.-designated foreign terrorist organization, was announcing its new charter. And we learned just beforehand, over the weekend, that it was going to do so at the Intercontinental Hotel in Doha, Qatar. And as soon as this came to our attention, we thought this is a global organization with offices in the United States, and we wonder if they are aware of U.S. federal law that prohibits providing any sort of material support to designated terrorist organizations. Material support can be, for these purposes, lodging, building materials, telecommunications equipment, expert training, a whole slew of things. The idea being, if you are a U.S. citizen or you're present in the United States, you should not be and cannot be helping our enemies accomplish their goals. So as soon as we learned that this event was scheduled for the Intercontinental, we sent a legal letter to the entire masthead of the hotel group, warning them that if they went forward and did host Hamas, they would risk violating this law, which can carry major penalties, financial penalties, and lengthy terms of imprisonment. Fortunately, they saw reason and canceled Hamas at the last minute, which then went scrambling and ended up at a Sheraton. We had also sent Marriott, which is Sheraton's parent group, a similar letter. I suppose maybe they didn't have time to read it or didn't know what was going on, given the last-minute nature, and that did go forward. But we were very happy to see Intercontinental decide that it was worthwhile to comply with U.S. law.
Yeah, and Sheraton, have they gotten back to you in the last 3 weeks?
They have not. No, we are figuring out what next steps are. Hopefully, at least they realize that. At least, and not from a legal sense, they realize that they should be more careful with who they allow to use their facilities. They're a U.S. company based, I believe, in Bethesda, Maryland, and they're certainly Bethesda. They're certainly very much within U.S. jurisdiction. So they should think twice about this next time.
To be fair, they probably didn't look at it. They didn't have much time to look at it and really consider it, I would guess.
Right. Without speculating, I had the same thought that if you have a bunch of people running from one hotel to the next, they're probably not going up to the front desk and saying, "Hi, we're a U.S. designated terrorist group, but we'd like to use your conference room this morning."
Yeah. Can I ask you a little bit about BDS? Which
Certainly.
you may have to explain. It seems to be a big area of emphasis in your work right now. Can you give the audience some background about what BDS is? I'm guessing half of them won't even know what I mean by BDS at the time, and what you guys are doing about it.
Absolutely. So BDS stands for Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions, and it is an ongoing campaign that emanates from the Arab League boycott of the mid 20th century, and the aim of it is to economically isolate and ultimately bankrupt the state of Israel by boycotting their companies, divesting from Israeli funds or funds that work with Israel, and et cetera. and essentially blacklisting them fully in the commercial sense.
Mm-hmm.
And we've, again, it originated with the Arab League boycott. Countries such as Kuwait, for instance, that decided that it would prohibit any sort of business relations with the State of Israel. And to this day, in fact, a number of those Arab League countries maintain these rules.
Right.
As I don't know if Brooke may have mentioned, but the Lawfare Project has focused quite a lot of attention on Kuwait Airways.
No, she hasn't mentioned that, or maybe she did and I forgot.
Sure. Well, I'll give you a brief rundown. It could be quite lengthy, but I'll abbreviate. Kuwait Airways, we learned several years ago, was operating flights, one flight route in particular, which was very inexpensive and therefore quite popular, from New York's JFK Airport to London Heathrow.
Uh-huh. And
Kuwait Airways, as a rule, does not fly Israeli passport holders. Again, part of the Arab League boycott of Israel, Israeli nationals, etc. So we found this out, and we thought this absolutely must violate some U.S. law. I mean, if anybody else was being treated this way, if an airline said no African Americans,
right.
No Hispanics, no Chinese, whoever the group may be, there would be outrage. And we learned that Kuwait Airways had been operating in this manner for 30-something years with impunity. So we had quite a lengthy process. The Department of Transportation, when first alerted of this, initially took the position that Kuwait Airways had to do this because they were complying with Kuwaiti law, again, Arab League boycott law, and we said that's absurd. If you reap the benefits of doing business in the United States, you need to comply with U.S. law. This is pretty standard. Mm-hmm. So together with the help of a number of attorneys from our network, we provided a number of submissions to the Department of Transportation, to the Port Authority, which runs JFK Airport, and ultimately got the Department of Transportation to reverse their decision and find that Kuwait Airways was indeed engaging in prohibited, unlawful discrimination based on national origin. So we then got Port Authority to send a cease and desist letter. Mm-hmm. Rather than getting kicked out, Kuwait Airways ultimately and very quickly canceled that route between so it wasn't the expected outcome, but it was certainly a good one, basically saying if you want to continue discriminating, you're going to have to stop this highly lucrative, we understand to be quite a lucrative route. Essentially, you're going to pay to discriminate. As an aside, the rest of their routes from JFK go to Arab League destinations, and because those destinations do not recognize the Israeli passport as a valid travel document, that sort of provides a legal excuse, if you will, to discriminate. That being said, that argument does not necessarily fly in Europe. Together with our Swiss counsel and now with our German counsel, we brought actions in those two countries, resulting in all of Kuwait Airways inter-European flights stopping. They canceled all those routes. Yes, and we're now pursuing an action in Germany to have their other routes that go from European destinations stop over in Kuwait City and then end up in Bangkok, Mumbai, some other spots, to have those canceled. So again, if people want to engage in this kind of flagrant discrimination, it's going to come at a cost and hopefully ultimately bankrupt the boycotters.
Great work, and one would think Kuwait would be a little indebted to this country, but apparently not. I want to ask you about one more thing you all are working on. Apparently, despite the ongoing terrorist incidents by Muslims in Europe, it's still a popular thing to have Palestinian terrorists give tours and speeches in places like Spain, and I understand you oppose that as well.
Yes, indeed, and it's truly outrageous. The way you characterized it is absolutely accurate. Together with our Spanish counsel, who has also been spearheading a major and ongoing counter-BDS, and very successful, I should add, counter-BDS initiative in Spain, we filed a criminal complaint against Leila Khaled, again on terrorist charges. For those who don't know, perhaps, Leila Khaled was, I believe, the first female plane hijacker. In 1969 and 1970, she hijacked TWA and El Al flights. She's a self-proclaimed member of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which is designated as a terrorist group not only in the U.S. but also by the European Union Council. And she recently spoke at a self-described radical book fair in Barcelona. And from reports we've received from attendees at the book fair, she essentially defended the use of armed violence and terror crimes for the sake of political causes. She characterized the PFLP, again, a designated terrorist group, as a liberation movement. She justified the murder of Israelis, and she even went so far as minimizing the Holocaust, I suppose not a surprise coming from this person, comparing the planned extermination of the Jewish people to battle fatalities suffered in other countries. And she even said the Jews want to have a monopoly on suffering. Only the Jews suffer, others don't. So in addition to the criminal complaint we already filed, we did file a second criminal complaint against her for exalting and justifying terrorism. And the goals are to have her arrested upon her entry into any European Union member state, added to Interpol and police databases, etc. So again, sending the message to these people that if you are a member of a terror group, you can't just float around in and out of countries and do what you want with impunity.
All right, you're doing great work. Benjamin Ryberg, Chief Operating Officer and Director of Research at the Lawfare Project, which you can find at thelawfareproject.org. Thanks for coming on with me today.
Thanks so much, Adam. Anytime.